Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sergeant Hand from the Raleigh Recruiting Station. Today we're going to be talking about the Army interview and preparing for the Master Recruiter Badge. So a little different than our usual training. With the Army interview, we have a couple great Army interviews already uploaded into the program that the schoolhouse actually uses for preparation for this program. And we also have a couple of the Army interview slide decks uploaded too. So if you need some more training in actually how to conduct the Army interview or getting your hands on one of the slide decks, reach out to myself or another Master Recruiter Badge holder, and we'll be more than happy to get you one of those slide decks, or to actually go over one-on-one with you the Army interview. So today we're just going to go over some best practices on the Army interview itself and how to prepare for it. This is a quick list of the topics that we're going to go over in the individual sections. First, we're going to go over how the Army interview has changed from this year as opposed to last year. How the rubric is how they're going to be grading it a little bit differently this year than they have in previous years. And then some best practices of the Army interview book, fact and evidence book, what to do before the interview, establishing rapport, building trust, forming pre-qualifications, identifying and establishing goals, generating and comparing alternatives, decision-making process, and generating commitment, handling the objection, and scheduling the follow-up. So hopefully you have your Master Recruiter Badge Handbook in front of you, and if you don't have one, there is one uploaded into the file section of this Master Recruiter Badge group. You'll see that this is a little bit different than last year. Some of the differences that struck me right off the bat is that it is there are less points to be graded on this year as opposed to last year. Last year there were 32 points to be graded on. This year we only have 28. So it's going to be a little more, require a little more studying to know what you're being graded on. But again, we're also going to that 80% metric for passing as opposed to 85 from last year. So you also have that going for you. So you have to get 23 steps correct out of 28 as opposed to 28 out of 32 in previous years. Also, you all notice that verifying basic eligibility, Apple MDT, is not an individual point for each part of Apple MDT. Establishing goals and passions is a little bit different. Same with generate and compare alternatives. It's not exactly like the rubric for the schoolhouse that we've used in previous years. Same with the execute decision-making process. And this year, it's important that the information given is accurate. That is something that some of the graders brought up was an issue last year, that some of the information given was not accurate, but there was no way to grade anybody on it. So that's the rubric broken down very quickly. Same supporting references. It'll be all the latest and greatest supporting references. But with the Army interview, a lot of it's going to be coming from how well you talk with the applicant, how well you know your individual skills. With everything else that we do in recruiting, the Army interview is all about practice making perfect. You gotta make it fun. You have to do it. And if you're not doing it, making it your own, it's going to become more of a chore than anything. I want to say that there was a lot of anxiety going into the Army interview, but it was also one of those things that a lot of people also looked forward to, just because it was you had your computer with you, or a computer with you that had your individual slideshow. You talked about yourself, as all recruiters love to do, or NCOs on recruit duty. So you get to make it fun, make it by yourself, and kind of make a game, make it into a game. So if you start doing that now, you start practicing your Army interview, you can prepare yourself for the actual Master Recruiter Badge Army interview. It is graded, but still, if you're comfortable sitting down, talking with someone, going over your Army interview book, whether it be on a computer, in a magazine, a notebook, however you have it printed off, or however you use it, it will make it just that much easier for you to go in there and actually do the Army interview. It's the same with the fact and evidence book. Practice makes perfect. Know your fact and evidence book. If you don't know what slide comes next, you're just going to be messing yourself up. And definitely make it your own. You want to have a fact and evidence book that talks about you and your achievements. Last thing you want to do is try answering a question about something that's in your fact and evidence book that you don't know anything about. Have fun with it. Again, this is an opportunity to talk about the things that you feel comfortable talking about. If you don't feel comfortable talking about the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, don't put in your fact and evidence book. Put things into your fact and evidence book that you do feel comfortable about. And then kind of make it into a game. The more fun you're having with doing your Army interview, the more you can make your potential Army applicant laugh and have a good time, the more comfortable you will be actually conducting the Army interview, and the greater will be for grading you. So before the interview, going into it, you'll be able to take 2 blank pieces of paper. Well, this is previously. You were able to take 2 blank pieces of paper in with you. You would have, if you are conducting an Army interview from the phone call that you made before, you'll have the notes from your phone call that you take in with you. When I did my Army interview, it was with a walk-in, so it was just someone straight off the street. But I know in previous years it was you were interviewing the person you made a phone call with, and last year that was the intent too. You were interviewing the person you made a phone call with, and you were going to interview the person you made the phone call with, and then you were build a packet for the person that you interviewed, and then you were going to conduct a future soldier orientation for that same person. So that was the logical progression of your Master Recruiter Batch week. So I wrote Apple MDT because that was what I always had trouble memorizing, because in previous years, memorizing Apple MDT was you got a go, no go for each part of Apple MDT. Now it is one go or no go for Apple MDT. So if you're having trouble knowing the progression of events in the Army interview, knowing Apple MDT might not be that important this year. So it's definitely knowing that rubric is going to be important. You also were able to take in the Privacy Act in 1974 and a piece of paper that substituted for giving your applicant source documents, whether that was a blank piece of paper or something that said source documents on it. Oops. So this is what I was really struggling to memorize, this Apple's MDT, because each one of these individual sections you had to have memorized verbatim, and you got graded on how well you memorized each one of these parts. This year, not so much. So you're still going to have to know all these questions and be able to ask all these questions in each part of this section, but it's one point for the entire Apple MDT. So, it's going to be more important knowing the order of events in the Army interview, because when you look at the grayed out bars in the Army interview, it is more a linear process, because once you pass one of these grayed out sections, you cannot go back to get back any points that you might have missed out on. So if you start going to soldier before you talked about the Privacy Act statement, you can't go back and get the Privacy Act statement or verify basic eligibility. You just lost out on those 2 points. So know the steps of the Army interview. Know what step comes first. And you can definitely use your Army interview book to help you out with that. So first part of the Army interview is establishing that trust and credibility. You're not going to have anything really in your notebook to help you out with this, or in your Army interview book to help you out with this. Might have a picture of you doing something that helps break the ice, but you're not going to have any step-by-step things in there. You're going to use it to put the applicant at ease, but also put yourself at ease. So if you have a icebreaker that you're comfortable with, use that. Don't try something new on on race day. You never want to do something that you haven't practiced with and used constantly on the day that you're doing the Army interview. So make sure you have something that is in your hip pocket that you can use to break the ice. If you're conducting the appointment of the person that you made over the phone, you make sure you confirm those notes with the applicant. That can also help to break the ice and help state the reason for the interview. You have that information already out there. If they're walking in, again, you can use that as part of saying the reason of the interview, why it's important to sit down and talk. And then you're going to ask them what they know about the Army and tell your Army story. You're going to be constantly taking notes because you're going to use those notes to help develop your courses of action later on down the road there. And then you're going to have to tell the Army story. Tell the Army story, including the Army values, soldiers' creed, warrior ethos. And the reason I included all of these parts, Army values, soldiers' creed, warrior ethos, is as an instructor, as someone that's being graded, I always want to give whoever's grading me, or when I'm an instructor, I want the person that I'm grading to give me as much stuff as possible so I don't miss any part of what they're doing. So if you're going over the Army values, soldiers' creed, and warrior ethos, it's very hard for a grader to miss one or all three of those to give you credit for that section. All right, before in pre-qualifications, you have to actually give the applicant the Privacy Act statement of 1974, explain the form to them, and have them sign it. This may be a blank piece of paper. They might not actually give you the Privacy Act statement of 1974. You might actually have to give them the paper and have them, pantomime signing it. But if they actually have you do it, go over with them, have them sign it. Ask all the Apple MDT questions. Know the questions, ask them all. You're going to be graded on how well you answer all those questions in Apple MDT. Ask more questions. If you don't think you've answered all the questions in A, ask some additional questions and keep on working your way down. It's okay to ask questions that aren't in a letter if you're trying to make sure you cover all the bases. And the grader is going to, depending on the grader and the guidance that's given by the Master Recruiter Badge team, they may give you credit for covering a section without using the exact verbiage for a section too. And give the East. Say, this is the East, I'm here to give it to you. Everyone's going to pass the East. There will be no tricks to it. There'll be no mystery. No one's going to fail the East. They're not going to make you kick the applicant out for not passing the East and give a whole Army interview to a person not passing the ASVAB test. Again, this is the person that you're also going to build the packet for and conduct the future soldier orientation with. Then you're going to establish those goals and passions. So you took down some notes. You're going to review those notes with the applicant, ask the questions to help generate those goals and passions using soldier. This is where it's important to know what soldier is, and you're going to use that fact and evidence book to go over all of the acrostic soldier. You're going to identify those goals, passions, and must hit each part of the acronym or acrostic soldier. And know what is important to you, why it's important to you, what else is important to you, the what, why, how much, and how are they going to pay for it. So when you're taking your notes, this is one of the things as an instructor, you always tell the students write down what, why, how much, how pay. So if you write down that what, why, how much, how pay, they've already knocked out something that they could possibly have lost out a point on. When you're identifying and establishing goals, you identify their goals and what they want to do. You're not trying to give them anything else to think about at this point. You're just verifying the information that you've already started gathering and helping them to identify what they're trying to accomplish. And you want to ask them what they want to do in 5 years, because they're going to use that to identify what their passions are. And work Soldier into achieving their goals, motivations, and relevance. So you're going to use Soldier to help them identify all those goals and work Soldier into all of them. So Soldier is going to, if you can, work into each individual or work Soldier into all their goals and passions. Then you're going to talk about their short-term, long-term goals and continue to take notes because you're going to use those notes to help prepare their courses of actions. And then always talk about the intangibles because on that grade and rubric that the instructors use, that's what they're always looking for, those intangibles. But it's still going to be part of what the Master Recruiter Badge instructors are looking for too. So if you talk about the stuff, because they're most of the time the instructors or the graders for the Master Recruiter Badge are going to be ARC instructors that have Master Recruiter Badges. So they're going to be looking for stuff that they look for in the students. So when you speak about the intangibles, that is right there what they're looking for in identifying and establishing their goals. Generating comparing alternatives. This is where you generate that regular Army course of action, that Army Reserve course of action, show how they're going to accomplish their plans, and then suggest whether the active duty or reserve plan is going to be better for them. Dollars to donuts this year, it's going to be a regular Army course of action that is going to be working out for them. Last year was all reservists. This year is probably going to be all regular Army. So again, you're going to suggest and recommend a course of action, but you're not going to disagree with them if they say a different course of action is going to be what they want to do. They're going to pick a course of action that's going to be regular Army or Army Reserves. They're not going to pick a course of action that's going to be the civilian one. Because you're going to talk about the civilian course of action, how they're going to accomplish their own goal based off their own plan, and then the 2 Army plans. So they're not going to talk about, oh, yeah, I think that maybe accomplishing the goal through going to college and my parents pay for all my college is the best course of action. Again, they're there to help you get the Master Recruiter Badge. They're going to be Master Recruiter Badge holders most likely too. So, keep that in mind. You must ask the question very close to like this, which of these alternatives do you feel will best support your goal? And then discuss why they think that. And then you're going to say, I agree completely with you that the Army Reserves is the best option for you to achieve all your hopes and dreams. So, Johnny, are you ready to join the Army Reserves? That's like right out of the ARC rubric that we used to use to grade the students. If you said it just like that, then the grader knows that you got to go for generating comparing alternatives. Oop. This is one of those things that you could take into the Army interview with you. You can either have it in your fact and evidence book on your computer or hand carrying it with you into the appointment. So you're actually able to discuss this. As you see, it's got some of those things that keep you on track. The what, why, when, where, how much I'll pay. It's got the courses of action, their current plan, which you're going to be filling out while you're sitting there with them. The active duty plan, the Army Reserves. It helps you talk about the information given was accurate. So you're talking only about stuff here. It'll keep the information accurate. You only talk about stuff that's on the soldier acrostic in the slide deck. It's going to keep your information accurate. Don't talk about, Army Reserve enlistment bonuses up to $50,000 and active duty enlistment bonus up to $45,000 because guess what? You're going to lose points in that. You're also going to be talking about those intangibles like leadership and other types of training. So keep working on all that stuff. If you have your life plan figured out and worked into your fact and evidence book, it's going to help you stay on track and one of those easy things that you can use to just get credit for the work that you're doing already. So make sure it's all updated too, because like this, I'm looking over the numbers here while I'm talking, and some of these dollar amounts for monthly base pay, they're just old. So you definitely want to get this stuff updated. Don't go in there with outdated numbers and be telling them that base pay for an E1 is $200.96 and E3 is whatever. Because if the grader's on the ball there, they're going to notice that and gig you on that. Working through the obstacle. So you may deal with this in the phone call. You will definitely deal with this in the Army interview at least twice. ORJ, FFF, logic. I mean, that's, again, one of those things that you're going to write down those 5 minutes before the Army interview starts. So we already talked about the why, how much, how pay. Now we're going to talk about the ORJ. Obviously, there's a reason for you saying that. And you repeat the obstacle. Just suppose that this wasn't an issue. Would you then be interested in joining the Army? And I understand how you feel. Others have felt the same way. Feel. Well, I found out, felt, found. And then wouldn't you agree that wouldn't you agree that missing out on these opportunities because of, X reason would be a awful reason for you to not fulfill all your hopes and dreams? And then bam, logic locked in, good to go. You just work through the obstacle. Oh yeah, there may be more than one smoke screen depending on how the team is doing it this year, what they're looking for, what they noticed last year. I mean, it's all about um, making sure that you guys are earning that Master Recruiter badge. And again, the rubric in the Master Recruiter badge handbook has the same type of stuff. I understand how you feel. Many people have felt the same way, and what I found out. And then just suppose. I mean, all the stuff that we just went over in the slide is right there in the rubric too. So almost taken right out of the rubric, like someone stripped the rubric for the answers. All right, and the follow-up. So conducting follow-up activity is a little more in-depth this year than it has been in previous years. A lot of steps. So if you look into the handbook here, 3 main tasks with a bunch of subtasks. So I don't know if they're going to incorporate this in the Army phone call or in the interview, but establishing that contact, building rapport, present a reason for the contact, review plans, goals, dismantle objections, engender commitment to enlistment, discuss processing options, scheduling follow-up date and time, and request referrals. I mean, this is all going to be part of the follow-up process. So, you do the same thing for following up with an applicant, following up with a prospect, and then following up with a lead this year. So knowing the minor differences between following up with a lead, prospect, and applicant, I mean, it looks like they're going to work it up into different parts of the Army interview. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. But following up with an applicant, I mean, this is once they get that commitment engendered, you've already had that contact, rapport, a lot of this other stuff already locked in. So just going to make sure that you have the steps out. So once the applicant has committed to join, then we're going to be discussing the timeline. We're going to be discussing the ASVAB, discussing the application timeline, discussing the physical exam, discussing the enlistment process, discussing the future soldier training program, and then asking for the referral. If you're not asking for that referral, I mean, we all know that open-ended fact-finding question, whom do you know, who do you know that might be interested in finding out more information about the Army? Make sure you ask that question. If you don't, you'll be setting yourself up just to miss out on a point there. Oh, and for the follow-up, make it simple. You know, tomorrow it's the same time as the next day at the same time. Make them at the recruiting station at the house. If you always practice your follow-ups for 2 times, 2 locations at the same time, same place, you're not going to start tripping yourself up by making it more complicated than it has to be. That became a best practice for me. So whenever I'm making any of my phone calls or interview follow-ups or future soldier follow-ups, I always made it into the same time, same location, all that stuff. So just make it simple. 2 times, 2 locations, same times, same locations. So it's always tomorrow at the house, next day at the recruiting station, both at 1700. Make sure you write it down too. If you're not writing down what time the follow-ups are, and the person tries tripping you up by saying something different than you said, it's just unnecessary headache. So when you write down those 2 times, 2 locations, or when you say those 2 times, 2 locations, write them down and then circle the one that they pick so that you can keep going back to it to reinforce that. Finishing on a positive note, that's kind of a gimme point there. And then showing real-time evidence to support Army options or programs. I mean, so we're got down to the last section. That's stuff that you're going to be doing throughout the entire Army interview. Showing real-time evidence, conducting temperature checks, just ask them, hey, does this sound like something you want to do? What do you think about these great options? It's something you want to make sure that you've worked into each section. So if you have the rubric memorized and you know the individual sections, as you transition from section to section, just keep asking. As a grader, I know that I just make a check mark every time someone asks if the person's ready to join the Army. That's all I'm doing. So just making sure that the appropriate times that they're asking. There will be distractors. I know First Sergeant Burns came into my appointment, started yelling in my face, spit got in my eye. Oh, it was something else. Very exciting time. One time, just a bunch of phone calls to the recruiting station that I was in. They always make it to be a lot more stressful than it has to be, just because they hope it'll break the ice and kind of test your ability to stay on topic and that the actual Army interview. You're not relying too much on your notes or your slide deck. And this is not the schoolhouse Army interview. Next slide's actually going to be going over the schoolhouse rubric that we use when I was an instructor. But this is not the schoolhouse rubric. It's go, no go for each of the sections. And that's how it's going to be graded. So you have to hit these sections. And if you don't hit these sections, you get a no-go. So know the sections. Try as much of a section that you can before you move on. It's okay to do too much in one section before you move on. This is a schoolhouse rubric. I have it uploaded into the file section as well. It's not the same as the rubric that is in the handbook, but it can give you some interesting prompts or helpful prompts to keep you on track when you're practicing your Army interview. So it is uploaded into the file section. Use it as a way to practice your prompts to help you guide along. That's all I have. This is my phone number, my email address. If anyone has any questions about this, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to go over any part of this if you have any questions. Thank you for your time. I hope you're having a great day.